Can you tell us a little bit about what first drew you to higher education as an academic field, as well as how you developed your specific areas of interest?
Sure. Well, I did my undergraduate work at Cal State Long Beach in Southern California, and I was, one of those students who started out in the sciences and discovered after a couple of years that I was really interested more so in the social sciences and human development and how people think and the ways that their minds work. And so I shifted my attention to psychology and decided to major in psychology. And I really enjoyed that field. I found it just a really, I think, a good fit with the things that I was interested in and cared about. And it was my junior year that I became acquainted with a faculty member who was running the master's program in student development and higher education at Cal State Long Beach. And that was Dr. Don Person, who was my first mentor in student affairs and higher education. And even though I was a college junior at the time, and I didn't know anything really about research and had very limited experiences, she invited me to be a part of her research team with her master's student. And it was through that experience that I really developed a love of higher education and of research and student affairs, and I was hooked. So from there, UCLA was just down the road, and I was very interested in studying gender issues in higher education, particularly issues of women's experiences in the STEM field. And there were two scholars at UCLA, Linda Sachs and Helen Aston, that were studying those kinds of issues. And so I got to meet with them when I was a senior in college and decided, yes, this is where I would like to study, and fortunately had the opportunity to go to UCLA for my master's and PhD. And so I've continued to be interested in gender issues, but something that I found very compelling as I was starting at UCLA was research on spirituality in higher ed. And I remember one of my first conversations with Lena Aston when I was looking at the UCLA program, and she said that she and her husband, Sandy Aston, were starting a new research program looking at issues of spirituality in college students' lives. And I said, I was so intrigued, and I said, spirituality? Well, what do you mean by that? And that was the beginning, and it was really serendipitous that I was there at the time that they started their national study of spirituality in college students' lives, and had a chance to be a part of that project. And it was very exciting. This was, back in the early 2000s, and that area was really new. So really we were trying to figure out at that time, how do we define and measure this very elusive idea? And is it something that the college students care about? What do they think about these things? And how do they develop in these ways during college? And what's exciting to see is that over the years, the study of spirituality has really evolved in a lot of ways, to the point now that we're really asking questions about how spirituality, religion, and worldview, how are they kind of these important dimensions of diversity on campus, and how do they intersect with other dimensions of diversity? So it's really been an honor and very exciting to be a part of that work over the years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. And moving more towards the present, what kind of work? What are you working on right now, and what are you hoping to take on more of in 2017?
Yeah, so I just finished a book project, which is the third volume of How College Affects Students. And my co-authors and I are very, very delighted to have wrapped that up, and the book was just released in September. But looking back, that I realized, I've been a faculty member for 10 years, and that was 5 years of my life as a faculty member. And so we're really excited to kind of be at this place where the book is wrapped up, and we're finally having a chance to share it with colleagues and students, and so that's been really exciting. So that's one major project that has really been my focus for some time. And the other piece that also has been really central to my work is issues of campus climate around religion and spirituality, and how students develop a sense of openness and positive attitude toward people who have other walks of life and perspectives. And my colleague, Matt Mayhew, who's a faculty member at Ohio State, he and I have worked together since we were new assistant professors and asking some of these questions. And a lot of that work that we've done, and a lot of it has been through a survey of campus climate that we've administered in partnership with Interfaith Youth Corps over the years. But that work was always cross-sectional, so we're really just taking snapshots of kind of where students on campuses were with regard to these issues. And a couple of years ago, we got funding to be able to do a longitudinal study. And that project is called IDEALS, which stands as a kind of a long name for our survey, but it's the Interfaith Diversity Experiences and Attitudes Longitudinal Survey. You can see why we call it IDEALS for short. In that project, we are tracking students across 4 years of college, and we've got about 20,000 students that responded to our initial survey in fall 2015. And we are tracking those students from their beginning of their first year to the beginning of their second year, and then to the end of their fourth year. So we have 3 data collection points. So we're just now wrapping up the second data collection. So we'll have longitudinal data on first year students in just a few months. And the kinds of questions that we're asking in that study essentially is in trying to help students develop more pluralistic orientations or more positive attitudes toward others, or a commitment to cooperating across difference. We're really interested in the what works question. So what kinds of educational experiences are they having, or interactions with peers that they're having that helps them develop that greater receptivity toward pluralism or religious and non-religious diversity. So that project will be my focus for the foreseeable future, so it'll go on for the next several years. And so that's a little bit about what I'm working on right now. I also have some interest in looking at, particularly given the national climate and things that are going on in the world around us. I'm very interested in how people develop constructive relationships, friendships even, across difference, and kind of what that process looks like, and how, even given, the vast differences that people experience from one another, how do they sustain those relationships, those friendships in the long term? So that's kind of a project that kind of come to my attention through the IDEALS work, and that I'd like to give some more attention in coming years.
Yeah, that sounds really especially relevant right now, and I'm really glad that kind of work is being done on such a large scale. Yeah. That's really great to hear. Cool. And the next question. So considering the Dalton Institute's theme for 2017, which is inclusion and isolation, restoring trust, and rebuilding community on campus, in what ways do you feel college campuses mirror our broader society as a whole, and then in what ways do they differ?
That's a great question. I would say in some ways our campuses are kind of a microcosm of U.S. society, because we know that the U.S. is a really diverse place when it comes to race and sexuality, faith, class, and so many other different kinds of identity markers that importantly shape who we are as individuals. And I think our campuses reflect, in some ways, that diversity. We know that that's not perfect reflection by any means, because we have significant access issues that remain in higher ed, but it is some reflection of that diversity. But what I think is really unique about our campuses is that usually they're a lot more heterogeneous than the communities where a lot of students grow up. So that exposure to diversity or to difference is really amplified on campus. And I know many of us who work in higher education are really familiar with comments from students, something to the effect of, this was the first time that I've met people who come from pretty dramatically different backgrounds and perspectives than where I come from, than from back home. And so as a result, I think that as educators, we're really faced with a great deal of opportunity and also a lot of challenges. And we know from experience and also from research that simply bringing diverse students together is not enough. Like, structural diversity is not enough. and left to chance, it's really unlikely that we're going to be able to create inclusive community. It's unlikely that that kind of community is going to just naturally materialize. But I think if we help and really focus on efforts to help students build more constructive and engaging kinds of relationships across difference, we can start to realize some of those unique opportunities that we're presented with in higher education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and your comments about building community across difference, I think, really do lead into this next question, too, which is kind of just situating it in the election climate. And so, yeah, throughout the past year, we've seen some great divisions in our national population that seem to have shown no signs of healing following the results of the election. How do you feel college campuses should be responding to this sense of divisiveness?
Yeah, this is another great question. And I'll be honest, I'm wrestling with this question right now, especially post-election. And it may be, a little bit of an unusual thing for someone who studies interfaith cooperation and getting along to say this, but, I think that a lot of the unrest and a lot of the divisiveness that we're seeing right now on our campuses comes from a place of really significant pain and fear and anger that people, especially of minoritized identities, are experiencing and have been experiencing for quite a long time. And so I've come to a place where I'm realizing that there are moments when divisiveness or that kind of unrest is our authentic reality. And there, to some degree, I can appreciate, calls for unity that we've been hearing lately, but I think that that's going to take a lot of time for it to be real, for it to be genuine. And frankly, I think that many people who don't hold majority identities, I don't think that there's a feeling of safety right now. And until those kinds of problems around safety for different groups are addressed in our country, that unity or that sense of cooperation is going to feel false for a lot of people. So in my view, I think for right now, our campuses really need to do everything in their power to help students feel secure, to feel heard in what seems like a pretty unprecedented time in our history. And I'm thinking of undocumented students, Black students, queer students, Muslim students, women, a lot, and the list goes on. Do we need dialogue about differences and how to navigate those differences on our campuses? Of course, but I think right now there's a sense of urgency and really a priority around protecting the well-being of our minoritized students. This is going to continue to shift and change, but those are kind of the ways I've been thinking about it, especially in the weeks post-election.
Yeah, I love that. I think the instinct really is a lot of time to just kind of jump straight into the dialogue and force that into programming. And so I love, to kind of offer more of a time of healing and just, well-being and safety for everybody. And so that does sort of tie in again to the next question, which also plays back to the topic of your work I'm most interested in. But so what role, if any, do you feel spirituality then plays in helping to build trust and community on a college campus?
Well, I think that conversations about spirituality, and we can use that word, or some people struggle with that word, so we can call it different things. Conversations around, meaning and purpose, or some of the bigger existential questions of life that we all wrestle with. I think those kinds of conversations can have a way of bringing us back to appreciating some of the things that we share in common as humans who are all trying to navigate our lives and navigate this really complex world. And when we do find a way to engage on a deeper level in those kinds of discussions, where we kind of let go of the goal of trying to prove our point, or those kinds of things, or to really defend any kind of perspective, doing that, getting into those deeper conversations, helps us to understand and appreciate someone else's experience. And I think in that, there is some opportunity to develop goodwill toward others and positive relationships or friendships with others. Hearing someone else's story can generate empathy and compassion. Where you can disagree with someone's religious doctrine or disagree with their political views, but not with their story. Their story is simply their story, right? So, and I think that spiritual exchange exchange or these kinds of conversations, these deeper conversations that people have, that, you know, where that kind of sharing is happening, it does give us the potential to start to build trust. You know, it's maybe not the perfect solution, but I think that it is a start. It's a place where people can be authentic with one another and start to form some of those relationships.
Great, thank you so much. And then our last question, just kind of, you know, zooming out a little bit, but what are you looking forward to most about the 2017 Dalton Institute?
Yeah, I'm very excited. And I think that what most excites me is connecting with colleagues who share some similar hopes, who share some similar values about what we can accomplish together in higher education. I look at it as a chance to really re-energize our sense of purpose and kind of our common determination to create a bright future for our students and for our colleagues, you know, particularly in light of what has been a pretty challenging time in our country and on many of our campuses. So I'm just really looking forward to that connectivity piece and getting to know folks on a deeper level.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I know we're all looking forward to the Institute as well. Thank you very much for your time, Jason. I don't know if you have anything else, but yeah, I look forward to meeting and speaking with you again.